as a result of one speech, how many more bookings you get.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So my mentor, he got a total of 18 bookings.
Okay.
So you can imagine it was a big event. We had leaders from 10 different countries. Guess how many bookings I got?
How many?
0.
Okay.
Yeah. And that was that first identity crisis to say, am I fit to do this speak and entertain job? Because fundamentally, I don't think I'm an entertainer.
Today, this guest in my studio is going to pop my cherry.
Pop your cherry.
Let me tell you why you'll be popping my cherry today. Because right now, we are into season 4. And you, not the first episode though, but you are our first shoot.
First shoot.
This is the first shoot for the new season.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
I thought Adrian was so it's the 3rd season.
No, this is season 4. So you are my first guest.
Okay.
For season 4, man.
Quite
you just popped my cherry, dude.
Cheers.
Cheers.
My pleasure. On a Friday afternoon.
On a Friday afternoon. Now everybody knows this is a Friday afternoon. It's a Friday afternoon. And very happy, of course, to get behind this hot seat. My goodness gracious me.
Thankfully, it's just nice, not too warm.
Yeah.
Chilly.
But my seat's always hot. And it's great to be back because how long did we take a break for? 2 months?
I think around there.
About 2 months, right? So we took a 2-month break. Season 3 is still being aired at this time of this shoot. And of course, after 2 months coming back, I said, oh my, it's been some time. So what do I do? Who should I invite in the show? And what I've done is, people, we are still rolling, and I know that you're watching. So what I've done is I made a decision. I'm going to ask this young man to come into the studio. As you can tell, right now, we are now definitely starting the show. And I want to read out some credentials to make you understand why I've decided to have this young person here on my gig. Welcome to the Chris Hansen Conversation for season 4. And my guest for the show is the youngest certified speaking professional, an accolade for the top 12% of professional speakers, executive speaking coach, and specialist in helping leaders and professionals be top of mind. I got to find out what the fuck that means. As a public speaking coach and professional speaker, my guest partners his executive clients from companies, loads of them, from banks to stat boards, etc., to enhance their performance on stage. Sounds like my fucking job. And communicate effectively across generations. Definitely not my job. He is also one of the youngest associate certified coach. How many things does this guy have? In Singapore and APAC. Credentialed by the International Coach Federation. His work has also been covered on over 60 occasions on over 10 media platforms like Channel News Asia, Radio Television Hong Kong, and the Straits Times. And of course, today, the biggest one of all, CCB TV, on a Chris Hansen Conversation. I'm not shy. Fuck that. So everyone, please welcome to the studio for this episode of I Love My Job series, Benjamin Loh.
Yay!
Welcome to the studio, my friend.
Thank you so much, Chris. It's like almost like deja vu. I still could recall, was it like over a decade back? It was in Ayer Raja. I went.
Oh, good gosh.
Good gosh, right? Like I was your student, was your mentee in the MC
Academy. MC Academy.
Your virgin batch, right? So that time you popped my cherry. This time I popped yours.
We take turns, man.
Yeah.
We take turns. Ben, thank you for being here, man. I'm very proud of your achievements. I'm very proud of all these things I've just read out, dude. I mean, wow. Your dream, wasn't it? It's always been your dream.
Well, I think dream is a huge word. I mean, there's different renditions, different backstories I like to tell. I mean, as far as I could recall, I was a petulant, overweight, chubby kid.
No shit, come on.
Yeah, I was. I still am, with like different parts.
Are you kidding me? Don't say that in front of me. No, we're both on camera right now, man. Come on.
Thankfully, with the cameras and technology, they can do a bit of like a smooth thing.
Oh, yeah. I wish.
but for real. Like when I was much younger, the peak weight was like 3 digits, right? And 3 digits was quite confronting for someone at 12, 13 years old.
You were 3 digits at 12, 13?
Yeah. I was like morbidly obese, and you can imagine the kind of like confidence I had, the kind of like self-esteem or the lack of I had.
Yeah.
But one thing I always recall, because you asked me about my dream, right?
Yeah.
I would come back from primary school or secondary school, and my grandma was saying, "Oh, go and bathe," and she was a Hainanese matriarch. But thankfully, I was a boy and the only boy in the family, so I had a bit of like a bargaining power. So I was saying, "No, grandma, I'm not going to bathe." And what did a boy do back then was that my eyes were all glued to the television.
Yeah.
And what was on the television was not like the cartoons or documentaries or not even news, God forsake. It was like in a Mandarin debate. In Chinese, it's called 国际大专辩论会, or in English, it's the international varsity debate. And I didn't know why, but I was just like mesmerized.
How old were you then when you were watching that?
13, 14 years old.
Okay.
Yeah. And I also didn't know like what that meant to me. I just saw people like having verbal sparring. They were so eloquent, so composed. They
Debates.
had panache. Yeah, debate. And I said like, wow, like I do not know what I'm going to do, but if I could get a bit of that, that would be a bit of my dream.
Really?
Yeah.
So what you're saying to me is that, okay. So what I said about this is your dream job. Right? And so therefore, this was a dream. It still is a dream, right? I mean, when you were 13, 14, you were watching TV, you were watching the varsity debates in Chinese, and you're going, wow, I want to be like them. So it is a dream. But you said dream is a big word.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because dream is a big word when it starts to hit reality, right? So obviously when I started to go through school and both of us are sort of in Singapore,
right?
I think the society has a different plan for me. I studied, went through the usual school, JC, university. I had placement to even go to the UK to study economics, which, required me to get a sort of scholarship. I turned it down. And then I asked myself, what did I want to do? So when I was on my bed in NS, I was like, wow, what should I do? I was flipping through the magazines of Forbes and Fortune, and they said investment banking, sort of like graduates make 5 figures. So I stupidly just did that. But the backstory was that my mom also, she used to sell golf clubs for a living. She said, Ben, just go become a CFO. And I asked her like, Mom, why? Why CFO? Is it like because you got C? No, it's the C, F, and O, because she reports to the chief financial officer. And in Hokkien, she say, every month, just ting, just shake the legs, and he'll be drawing like 20K. So study accounting, finance, and that would be it. Right. Story has that after the first year, I realized that I was never a numbers guy. I could never balance my cash flow statements. The everyone was left and right was balancing. I was the cuckoo. I could just never tie in that 20 cent, 30 cent. It's like, I look at myself, I felt like a retard in accounting school. I studied accounting in a big 3 university, and my professors would always ask me like, why are you here? Yeah, why are you here? And
that bad, huh?
Yeah, that bad. And that was when I had my existential crisis. I went through a life coaching program. I decided to say, hey, maybe my talents were in teaching.
Can I stop you there for a moment?
Please do.
Let me just bring you way back again.
Yeah.
Let's go back to you as a kid. You were saying you had self-esteem issues, etc. What did it make you say, when you were in your teen years? How would you describe yourself back then? Would you have described yourself to be someone that would be what you are today, standing on stage, teaching people how to speak in public, and everything else that you do today? When you look at yourself back then,
I think they always say like hindsight is 20/20. I like to, with the benefit of hindsight, say, everything was made to be like this. But I think the best way I would look at it was like, another mentor told me there's a difference between scars and wounds.
Okay.
Yeah. So back then I was wounded. Going through school, boys' school for 10 years, and boys being in boys' school, right? It's not like when girls are around, everyone will be very gentlemanly, like show the door. They give me the middle finger. They were just like...
Which school is this? Don't mind me asking.
Oh, yeah, St. Andrews. I went to St. Andrews and then Maristella.
Oh, the rough and rugged guys.
Schools, yeah, but the guys there, they are the nice guys.
It's a rugby school, man, as far as I'm concerned.
And
yeah.
then Maris was a mixed bag. It's a Chinese school and got a few like paikias there.
So Maristella, paikias are nothing compared to...
Yeah, compared. Everything's relative.
Yeah, but then again, so when in being in Maristella, would you describe yourself to be a smart kid academically?
I felt that I had to be smart to find some sense of self-esteem.
Right.
Yeah, so my whole journey was that I was being bullied in school. I was bad at sports, or at least I thought I was. I was bad at, chasing girls. There weren't any girls anyway, except for, Boy Scout going to like Girl Guides, all these big events. I had social anxiety issues. I can't look at girl in an eye, and without my legs shaking, it was that bad. So the only area or only place I could find some worth was in my academics.
Right.
And I did well in school, got top 3, stuff like that. So that was how I constantly push. I find I needed to use schooling as a way to validate myself.
Right.
Yeah. So it's kind of sad. But you see, like that was the period where I was wounded, right? Now as I look back and I say, because of all this bully history, all the social anxiety issues, all those like a lack of significance, now because of all that it sort of fuels me in terms of what I do.
So when you watch the varsity debates back then, when you were in your early teens, right?
Yeah.
And you were, for lack of a better term, mesmerized by what you saw.
I was.
Yeah. So being mesmerized by what you saw, and then you were bullied in school, you lean on your academics to get yourself great there. Throughout that time, did you still hold on to that dream of being able to do what? To be a speaker or debater?
Not at all.
Then okay. So what happened to that drive then? At 13, 14, watching the varsity debates and go, wow, if I can only do that.
Yeah.
So what did you do to get yourself? I mean, even at that young age, I just want to understand, was there, did that seed really sprout as you were growing? Did you find a way to be the Benjamin Loh of today and the last, how long has it been? More than a decade of doing what you've been doing
12,
successfully.
Years. Yeah.
What's that journey like? Was there something in that journey that led you there from that time? Because I don't know. For all you know, man, you got parents watching the show. Kids shouldn't be watching the show. You got parents watching the show, right? And these parents might want to try to understand it. How would I get my kid to do what Ben has done? Or maybe they should just leave it to the kid. I would say leave it to the kid. But just in case you got some of these, these parents who just like to do some helicoptering.
Yeah. I say that with a sigh because I need to really preface, right? I mean, first and foremost, I don't even know whether parents would want their children to be in my life, in my shoes. I like to say...
Why not?
Well, I'm doing as a result of on one part, I love the work I do. I feel that it's full of impact. It's creating a lot of very tangible moments of joy, of the kind of results. But you see, my trajectory into it wasn't clean.
Sure.
Yeah. It wasn't clean in that list. It's not that, I had a few intentions.
So, but Ben, are you saying to me then that maybe this is something that people should not endeavor to become?
I think you should endeavor to become if your intentions are definitely clean, you're aware, and you know what you're stepping into.
So is it worth the while for them?
Well, it all depends. Yeah. I mean, it's going to be a rough road. I'm happy to share in my latter chapters of what it takes to be a speaker, to be paid well.
I will come to that because I have that ready. Yeah. I have that ready for you actually, but let's not talk about that yet. So okay, let's listen to your journey then.
Yeah.
So for you, was it accidental?
It was accidental. So you used the right word, it's a seed, right? So I look at seed because the seed was just planted in me.
Right.
And when I look at the debaters, it was really like, wow, if I could be having the kind of significance as them. But you see, sometimes when we want something, it's a sign that we lack it inside. So for me, I don't want to overcomplicate things, but when at 13, 14 years was really at my lowest where I didn't feel that there was a sense of self-worth. And it was also because, our pre-conversations, my dad, my mom was so busy working. I wish someone would just sit down with me, take me to school and say, hey, Ben, what is it exactly you want to do?
Right.
You see, so that seed was something that I had to grab for. It was not something that was brought up from within me.
Right.
Yeah, so I could imagine, I don't know, right? Because if someone that I trust, I look up to, I love, could sit me through that painful growing up years, I may be doing something different.
Right.
I may be an artist, musician, I may be something else.
Right.
Yeah, but it was a seed that was planted and made sense of it. It's a bit like, I was forced, I won't say a force, I was inspired to love what I did. And thankfully for the large part of it, I really love it.
When you say someone that that you love, that means a loved one.
Yeah.
Right?
A parent, elder, senior.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Who would sit down with you and give you some guidance. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Now, which means what you're saying is that it is important throughout most parts of our lives to have someone who knows better, our betters basically, to mentor us. Is that what you're saying?
I would say to mentor, but more importantly, to give space. Can I tell a quick story?
Sure, please.
Yeah, so in my earlier years, when I was featured as a highly achieving youth back then when I was still qualified to be a youth at SMU, I still recall I was on the Sunday Times. It was like, the all performing or the star youth whatsoever. I then received an email which led to a call the very, very a couple of days later.
Right.
It was like this lady from bank. And I was wondering why did you want to meet me? She said, hey, I want you to coach my son. I said, okay. Back then I was doing a bit of youth coaching, but I didn't know why. So until I realized that after I met her, she said that her relationship with her son was strained and she wanted me to coach her son for her son to do something like me. Then the first reflex was that what made you think that your son wanted to do whatever I'm doing?
Yeah.
You see?
Yeah.
So that was in a case good intentions, but is that really what the son wants? It's not giving space to the son, right? So
Right.
I had to turn down the job because, I don't want to be responsible for steering someone down that path that, he or she will be unhappy with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So why did I say this? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So you said like mentor, right? So I think mentor is like that assumption that, you want to linearly lead the person down a sort of a path.
But then
I
again,
think
some parents are not fit to be mentoring.
Exactly, right? I would say like mentoring, coaching, giving space, but
And this is
really
shoving it down the
listening.
kid's throat, that is, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, like
because-
this example you just cited.
Correct. Because they saw me on the papers as like a highly achieving kid.
Yeah.
But they didn't know like, I was highly happy as a kid.
Yeah.
I was highly joyful as a kid.
So they've actually placed an expectation on the child.
Yeah.
Yeah, which it might not really be suited to the kid. The kid might not have that same expectation.
Totally.
And then we all grow up living other people's expectations rather than ours.
Someone else's life, someone
Yeah.
else's dreams.
Yeah. Fuck me. Tell me all about that. Yeah.
It hurts, man. It hurts, man.
It does.
Let's not go to pain here.
It
Otherwise
does,
it'll be
it does,
We
it
need a bit
does.
of Kleenex right now. Yeah.
So you fell into this. So it was actually kind of accidental.
It was very accidental.
But you knew always that you've had this draw towards being able to speak well publicly. Is that the right way for me to describe this?
I think speaking well publicly is the function of it, is a prerequisite. But I
Right.
think the debate story planted the need to want to be useful.
Okay.
To have the ability to persuade, convince, right? Then later parts of, like different mentors I met, it's like playing this mega jigsaw puzzle. Oh, what it means by the speaker is you can sort of travel the world. I like that. Or what it means by a speaker means that, you have a big mandate and responsibility on stage. You better don't screw that up. You don't talk cock, on stage. I
Right.
want that.
Right.
So I sort of like took each and every, the people I look up to, even for you, like when I went for your class and FD, I would always recall, like the kind of meticulousness you all put, the kind of intention you all put, you all say that MCs are not just MCs, reading out scripts, setting the tone, setting the energy. You see, more than 10 years, I still recall, it's like, that also applies to me as a speaker. You see, you don't just go there and say a bunch of words. It's all about the kind of frame of mind. So with all the teachers I learned, I think, I then have a map or a jigsaw puzzle that comprise or builds up, what I believe this occupation or profession should be.
So when you mention this occupation profession is strictly as a speaker, right? But you picked a subject matter, and the subject matter, I think you have a few, but what I gather from what the public can see is
Yeah.
public speaking.
Yeah.
Am I right? Why that discipline?
Well, I started out coaching youths in public speaking, particularly because that was my call to courage, my call to maturity as well, because I felt that, back then I didn't have many things that I could be good at, or at least that was what I thought. I was bad
Okay.
at arts, I was bad at sports, I was bad at chasing girls, I'm not even like, having like chiseled looks. The only thing I could do is like I can speak quite okay.
Can
good
you imagine
English.
if Benjamin Loh becomes a speaker about how you can actually chase girls?
Yeah.
Oh,
you
that'd be
see.
great, man.
Yeah. But you see, it's all the narratives that we had in our head, right? So that was why, like I don't blame my dad or my mom. They did the best that they could. But you see, now in my role, I feel I'm a bit more aware. I want to be nurturing my 3-year-old to say, hey, as you go down there, I love the conversation you had is you have that awareness to build up the map for your kid to say, hey, if you go down that path, this is the potential consequences, both the good, both the bad. If you go down this is what you should consider, you see.
Well, I want to
had figure
dissect this,
things
Ben.
out.
I'm still trying to
Yeah.
understand.
I know it's very murky.
Of because of all the things out there that one can actually specialize and speak about, you chose public speaking.
Yeah.
I'd like to dissect that. I'd like to understand what is it about public speaking that got to you, that made you want to take this on and go, I want to teach people that. But I think before you do that, right, and correct me if I'm wrong, you want to make sure that you can do it first. Did you do that first? What did you do?
I think for me, the easiest iteration would be, I had to find my voice first.
Yeah.
Yeah. So metaphorically, to discover, like, I had a voice inside, but I was voiceless. So sometimes I blog on LinkedIn to say, growing up, I literally had all the good grades, the A's, the PSLE and stuff like that. But I didn't really feel that, I was having a voice. It was just like going through the motion. And I think my first call to maturity was learning how to speak. And when again, it sounds very fluffy, but when you put content into the speech, when you bring the words out from you and you feel what you say and you say what you feel, it was when I felt that I was really alive.
Okay, so you felt that, hey, I like this.
Yeah, at 19, 20 years old, when I started to do like maybe Toastmasters, hey, I realized that I can speak, and sometimes I speak and I make sense.
So you found your voice.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it was that journey, and then piecing back my backstory as a bully victim, my backstory as a low self-esteem person, being in a sort of like every Singaporean family. I don't have like the best tuition like some kids does, sending you to Julia Gabriel and debate and whatnot. My family is not like that well-to-do, but I still could speak. I won a couple of trophies, and then say, hey, if I could do it, how about I teach people how to do it? So then the second tier of work where people start to come to me with different sorts of background, all walks of life, and say, hey, like how do I speak? How do I find my voice? So that was the second tier.
So when you attended this Toastmastering and all that, and you found your voice, at which stage of your life was that?
19, 20 years old.
Okay, that before you started work.
Correct.
Right? So when you started work, now I'm going to move you forward.
Yeah.
From where we left off earlier on.
Correct.
When you investment banking, right?
Yeah.
And then, hey, honestly,
I hope the bankers are not listening.
Honestly,
later they'll give you
if I don't know you, if anyone don't know you, I would actually easily think that people would you would look like a banker.
Really? Like what aspects of it? Hair?
No, yeah, everything about you, man.
Really?
Yeah. If I didn't know you and I didn't know what you do, I would have thought this guy's a banker, probably a private banker.
How come?
I don't know. It's just a vibe.
The PB vibes, the too slick,
PB vibes.
Too slick, too slippery to be.
Okay. I don't know. PB, I can think of a lot of bad words, but let's not go there.
Let's not add any more like alphabets between P and B.
So, you did go into investment banking.
No, I didn't.
You didn't. Okay, then what did you do? You didn't go into public speaking or became a speaker straight away.
Yeah.
So what did you do?
So during my uni years, I had a inkling that what I wanted to do, what I didn't want to do. So it was more like reductionist.
Accountancy. Yeah.
So I did my first God forbid, 3 months of internship with a taxation firm.
Right.
And every single day, I kid you not, was like going to office and seeing this like a Taiwanese drama unfold. I could literally just step into office, the auntie in front there, I still could recall she used the nail clipper, click, click, click. And every day she would do that thing. I wonder like how many nails she could cut like every single day. And then she would start her routine. And then the left-hand side was the tax manager. And then she'll be bitching. To be fair, it was an SME. So you wouldn't expect anything more. But even the work that they were doing, and the kind of lives that they were living, with due respect, we all choose different lives, right? I couldn't imagine myself going through the drudgery of accounting. So I reduced that. I eliminated that. So I was that weird kid in uni. Like people just usually take 1 or 2 internships. I did 6 internships. I did accounting. Wow. I did like PR. I did like marketing. I joined over 30 competitions. So I did like, for example, how to design the future police post. I was like so bored with school. I went to write an essay on like what's that man in the middle attacks for cybersecurity. The reason why was 1, I was bored. I wanted some fun, and then 2, I wanted some funds as well, right? Because when I won competitions, I earned some pocket money.
Right.
Yeah. So that 4 years, because I did so badly in accounting school, I realized that it was like just like a dead end. Nobody told me that if you screw up, you get 1 C or 1 D, 1 E, your GPA is screwed, right? Okay. Your grade point average.
Right.
So when I realized my grades were down, then I said the only way is up and out. So I did so many things. So long story short, at the end of 4 years, I had an offer from Big Four. I decided not to go into an accounting firm. And I did sales. I did corporate sales training. Sorry, I did sales for a corporate sales training company.
Okay.
Yeah, so that was like my first and only job.
For how long were you?
And that was the time I went for the MC Academy.
Oh, that was the time.
Yeah.
How long were you there?
How long? I was there for about 1 year, 9 months. Not very long.
And that was it?
Yeah, and
being under employment, that was it?
I was very, very thankful. I had 2 Angmo bosses. Both of them were from America. So one was like very, very like chubby, very gregarious. Another one was like, the opposite. It's a military man. He's a West Point
West Point
West Point graduate,
Yeah.
and DISC profiling, right? You say,
Yeah.
Ben, I have no I, S, and C. I only have D. and what it means in very layman human terms is that he's just like he's just
Dominant.
dominant, domineering person. He has no relational, there's no steadiness.
Oh dear.
and I would always recall, my first task on that job was doing cold calls. He would tell me like, Ben, you don't have to like to do cold calls. You just have to do it. in a freaking military style. So you see, there's not much of emotions when it comes to like doing business, but I was thankful to have them, you see, because they gave me the blessings as well. They say, you can do whatever you want, do your side hustle, do your speech coaching, your public speaking, you can do, so long you hit your numbers on the day job.
Right.
Yeah, so I had a lot of freedom. I was in an office that basically only like 2 others, and they were remotely in Hong Kong. Sometimes they flew in. I did that for 1 year, 9 months, and I think I hit my numbers. I was like making 5 figures, not too bad for a fresh graduate. But then it hit the existential crisis again.
Okay.
I asked myself like what's the future? Like, do I want to continue to sell? Like I mean the money was good, but besides the money and beyond the money, I didn't see that there was a path.
So again,
Please do.
I'm asking the same question in a different format.
Yeah.
Because as you tell me your journey, right? The story of your life as you get along
The
into
tapestry.
Yeah. I will ask the same question in a different form. The calling, there wasn't a calling yet at that time to do what you're doing now.
I think there was always voices. Oh, sounds very creepy, yeah.
No, it's fine.
Yeah.
Just say it.
There were always things that called out to me, but that magnitude of that, the nature of that, the reasons of that, the strength of that was always varying. So I think at that time was like mid to late 20s, right? Calling for me was that if you don't take a leap, you'll regret this.
You're making this sound as if you're going to be called to the priesthood, man.
Yeah, called to the pulpit, right? Yeah.
Called to be a priest, being in the clergy.
Sermon, yeah.
I mean, yeah. So this has never been an ambition, actually.
Never
Never been.
I like to say in my industry now that I do work with insurance agents, right? Nobody wakes up to be an insurance agent. I didn't wake up to be a professional speaker, right? The only thing was that TV and say, hey, if only I could be as like persuasive, significant as them. It was just that seed of significance, but I didn't have like totality that wow, and the consciousness to say, oh, I want to fly, I want to travel, I want to get booked, I want to get like 5-figure fees, blah blah blah. No,
Nothing like that.
None of that.
But you discovered that you were good at it and you liked it and you enjoy it.
Yeah.
Am I getting all these pieces right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think the simple, again, if we're going to put it into a very, very quick framework, and I'm more like a framework structure guy.
Sure.
I call this like 4 P's, which I inherit from my mentors.
Spoken like a true trainer. Okay, okay. 4 pieces. Yeah, okay.
The first P is the proficiency.
4 P's.
4 P's, right? 4 PAS P's, right? The first P is the proficiency.
Right.
I sucked at numbers. I suck at academics.
Yeah.
Or rather in numbers and finance. But what came natural to me was talking, right? Like when I talk to people, I could listen when I need to listen. I could talk and be fluid when I need to speak. So I say, maybe there's something down there, yeah? And then the second part is like profits. So the first part was, I could teach, I could talk, but hey, why don't I become a quote unquote MOE teacher? But I realized, like being a teacher, with all due respect again, I don't think I will earn enough for what kind of life that I wanted to, right? So I had to be practical, to be paid to speak. Where could I go to, right? So I need to map that. And I think the third part is the purpose, the purpose as well as passion. Have you ever asked yourself, what's the root word of passion?
The what?
Root word.
Root word?
Yeah, like, if you go back to the history and what's the root word of passion?
No.
It comes from this Latin word called pati, P-A-T-I,
okay,
which means to suffer. So a lot of us think that, like to be a musician, wow, it's my passion, right?
Just to share with you, now that you've given some light on that word, passion, and in Latin is pati.
Yeah.
Excuse me. That's why in the Catholic Church, when Jesus Christ was on his way suffering to his death, right? They call it the Passion of the Christ. Yeah.
Exactly, right? Yeah. So I think like even as a young person, I was sold into this dream like, oh, passion means you're going to be enjoyed each and every freaking day. But it was that inkling and that remembrance of like passion equals suffering. What am I willing to suffer for the long run? So I tried different things. But like going through being on stage, having like audiences walk out on me, having like screwed up gigs.
Did you have that?
Have. Yeah,
wow.
I can share with you like some gigs where, I was doing for a client.
Well, you call them gigs.
Yeah, gigs, assignments. We call it gigs, assignments, shows where I had to speak Mandarin, for example. I had people just literally walk out on me because I was that unproficient. And I would just go back, being an introvert, I locked myself in a hotel room for a good 8 hours.
You just said that word for me.
Which word?
Introvert.
Yeah.
How? Okay. So right now, people, we have a guy who says he's an introvert and he actually teaches people public speaking. So tell me about that. How that became possible, man? How did you do that?
It's hard to actually narrow down or
let's just talk it through. Let's just talk it through, man.
How do I do that? I think, it's what is called uncanny. I just wrote a bit more like a disgruntled LinkedIn post today. And this was really like, a message. An insurance student yesterday wrote to me. He was writing to say, hey, I'm an introvert coming into the sales and insurance line. It's not easy, blah, 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 blah. It's not easy to put me out or put himself out there. And then at the back of my mind is like, who says it's not easy? Why can't it be easy, right? So where I'm driving at was that disgruntledness was that I think we need to really like examine, like, does introversion really is a handicap, or is introversion, can it be a strength? Yeah, in my opinion, like what totally clicked from within me was that I could be really, really honest on the CCB show.
Sure, please. CCB TV show. Yeah.
CCB TV show.
The Chris Hansen conversation, more precisely.
Yep, with Mr. Chris Hansen, the affable Mr. Chris Hansen.
Oh, thank you. Very affable.
In more ways than one.
I mean, we can take that word out of context, or that's fine.
Let's not go between the lines.
Okay, let's stop talking about the affable Chris.
Yeah, I think it's very palpable. Yeah, it's very felt. But you see, in the speaking world, I can tell you another bag of stories, right? Okay, so my journey was I coach people how to speak. I was a trainer, but my journey to be a professional speaker was yet another trajectory.
Sure, let's not forget what we were talking about. We're saying disgruntledness about what makes you think an introvert cannot make it in what you're doing. And specifically, because today's topic is about you and what you do, not just selling. Yeah, sure. But of course, being an extrovert doesn't necessarily, agree or disagree, doesn't necessarily mean that you do well in both disciplines as well, but it's selling or whether or not it's speaking.
Yeah.
So what is it then?
I think whether for speaking, selling, building a brand, building a business, they're just that set of fundamentals.
So what is it about an introvert, a person who's introvert, with his introvertedness, being able to successfully do something of his chosen path or career that people would say belongs solely, well, the small-minded, narrow-minded ones will think that way, belongs solely to the extrovert. So what is it about the introvert then? Let's talk about that.
I think the easiest way would be to tell you the story of one gig. All right. So I was speaking in Phuket by a life insurance client, and there were 3 other speakers. So one was the former CEO of AirAsiaX. He's a very suave, very eloquent gentleman.
Right.
Second was the Google APAC HR director.
Right.
The third was a mentor of mine who was also in the speaking industry. And then there was me. So back then, it was a hard journey to become a professional speaker. What is a professional speaker? A speaker who gets paid to speak.
Sure.
So I was like, doing full day training is more like a training persona. Training means you're going to download and share, use a lot of slides. Yeah. But as a professional speaker, your time is compressed to 1-2 hours. You need to, you need to be a storyteller.
Yeah.
You need to be energetic. You need to be dynamic. Or at least that was what I thought. So we ended the entire event. The client came to me and said, like, Ben, I think you need to be a bit more peacock. Then I scratched my head and I said, what do you mean? Right? So I later realized, the effectiveness of a speaker usually can be measured not just in amount of claps, standing ovations, but in a commercial sense. As a result of one speech, how many more bookings you get?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So my mentor, he got a total of 18 bookings.
Okay.
So you can imagine it was a big event. We had leaders from 10 different countries. Guess how many bookings I got?
How many?
0.
Okay.
Yeah. And that was that first identity crisis to say, am I fit to do this speak and entertain job? Because fundamentally, I don't think I'm an entertainer. Yeah. So tying back to, like, how does introversion or the lack of, or introversion, is it a strength, handicap? I had this like tenuous relationship. I had almost like say, screw this lah. I'm not going to do this. I'm just going to do like maybe just coaching and workshop training. But just one part of me say that, hey, there must be something in me.
Sure.
Yeah. And I sort of pursued that. I sort of found, again, quote unquote, my voice. I realized that people don't need me to be rah-rah. People don't like me to be someone that's flamboyant. I decided to drop all those colorful suits and just like wear plain blue, white, right? And then when I spoke from the depth of my knowledge of the industry, of whatever I was teaching. So a bit of context again. As a speaker, I teach people that, they have an identity, right? They can brand themselves, they should put themselves on social media because that's how people discover them.
Yeah.
So that's the final endpoint, or rather today, this endpoint. I'm not too sure where I lost you, but that's the entire kind of journey.
I see. So basically what you're saying is that if you're an introvert and you can't be that flamboyant persona, don't force yourself to be one. But instead, lean your strengths on the things that would really, shout it out more. Shout your strengths out more.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
And
so recognize, but first you have to be aware and recognize what those strengths are.
And on the flip side, that's where I think, we've sort of wronged introverted people for so long. You see, like when I was growing up, introversion was never a word. People were just saying, like, Ben, you're very quiet. You're very awkward. I still remember my report card as, like, Ben does well in school, he's great academics, but maybe he should speak up more.
Yeah.
Right? So it was like shy, awkward, anxious, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
It's only in this era that introversion is accepted. But if you look at introversion as a construct, like realize that if you're an introvert listening, you have so many great talents that you're having. Like you have the benefit and gift of intuition. You tend to be more observant. You don't need to speak up when you don't feel like speaking up. You're more observant. You're more empathetic. All of that, right? It's all about harnessing all this good stuff to put it into a business context.
And then, of course, basically let it really fly. Bring it out into the open and shout all these out. Make sure people know that.
To be a bit more peacock in a daft way.
Yeah, well, my goodness, we're going into transactional analysis. Birds theory, man. Birds theory. Okay, and you can tell I'm a peacock too. Anyway, I've got some eagle as well.
Yeah. Don't we all? Yeah, don't we all? I think having ego is a healthy state of like being as well.
Sure, but if we go on too much, and there's a lot of people out there who've never gone through this.
Correct. They'll be kind of lost.
The birds theory, they're going to be kind of lost. I asked about the introvertedness because I also feel that it's unfair for introverts to be stereotyped into certain molds. For example, I work with a lot of people from all walks of life and comedians. Great ones, even our own local comedians. Do you know most of them are introverts, man? These guys that go on stage.
Is it a different persona? Is it like a
when they go on stage, man, you recognize them for who they are on stage, and you go stand up. And stand up is the hardest thing, in my opinion.
Difficult.
The hardest thing to do, man.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, but even if you do public speaking courses for that, not going to work.
It's different.
I've always admitted to the fact that it's hard to teach stand up. As a matter of fact, it's near impossible. You've got to find it within you to do it. You're not just your content, but how you deliver it and how you deal with hecklers and blah, blah, blah. I mean, I had Rishi here as well. Yeah. But they're great guys. They're nice people. Yeah. But most of them are introverts. The moment they're off stage,
that's it.
Different.
I'm going to find my space.
Yeah,
and
different,
my
man.
lot.
Different. So I think I think being an introvert is a strength, and I'm an extrovert. But I am an
aware extrovert.
I'm also very aware of my introverted side.
Yeah.
Every one of us has it.
Correct.
It's not as if we're all devoid of that. We have it.
We are more like ambiverts as well. It's really depending on like context as well. So what's our leanings?
So you could be an introvert, but you have a bit of extrovertedness in you as well. There's no way it's absent. There's no way.
Correct.
It's just about finding it and digging that out. As you said, very quite coincidentally, it is finding your voice. Yeah, and I think that's what happened. In my listening to your journey, how I see it, I might be wrong, but how I see it is that when you found your voice, you found that little piece of you in part of that jigsaw puzzle. That this is my introvertedness that's there. Maybe you didn't see it as that, but I think you found that. I think you found that bit of you.
It all clicked, you see. Like, for example, like the bully story, it became a narrative. Like, the awkwardness became a narrative. They're getting rejected by girls. I even had this like nickname called 3-2-1. Three girls that I profess my love to, 2 swollen teary eyes and 1 broken heart. 3-2-1. Everything just came together. The accounting thing. You see, I think life again is like what Steve Jobs mentioned or said, right? Like you cannot plan your life looking backwards all the time. You just have to lean forward and trust that dots will all connect. So that was really, I like to think, the story of my life. A lot of people say, hey, like how do you become a coach? How do you blah blah blah? Like, I didn't know. I just knew what the next step was.
Right.
And then I had enough courage, an ounce of courage to just take one step. And it just made a bit more sense over time.
But you strike me to be a chap also that sits back and reflects a lot.
I do.
And there are people out there, I think, that don't do that. They don't sit back and reflect and try to work out what's happening in my life today in a lot of ways. It's not just in my social life, but in my professional life.
Yeah.
And people don't sit back to think. They just want to get that job. And then they don't. I'm sorry, Adrian Chu, but I'm going to use what you said. They don't strategize their way.
Okay.
Jeez, I don't believe I just said that. It sounds so cheesy.
It sounds so on you, by the way.
Yes, it is.
Your way. Yeah.
Strategize your way, And but you're one of those guys that would do that, and I think that's important for people to also note. In your opinion, man, professional opinion, what's important in public speaking?
Wow, that's a huge and loaded question.
I'm sorry, I always load my questions.
Yeah. What's important in public speaking? I could run a whole day class.
No, just pick one. Pick one.
Just if one thing that really clicks with me, I think you need to be useful on stage.
Useful.
Yeah.
Wow.
I say
what
useful.
Does that mean?
Yeah, and what it means is like, for the time that you're on stage, that brings me back to a conference in India. I was like back then very, very young and formative. And I was like, hey, I was in a public speaker. Everyone was like looking at me, and then we're all youths from different countries. And then I had a more like a senior youth who came to me, and he was also in public speaking. And then he said like, hey, Ben, great to know you. And I said, hey, you're in speaking as well. Why? He said like, well, Ben, for me, speaking is a duty. I say, sounds like what? Duty, NS, national service. No. He said like, if I'm speaking for 10 minutes to 50 people, I'm taking up 500 minutes of the world's time. And that always left me, right? 10 minutes, 50 people. They could be there everywhere. I mean, granted, their minds could be elsewhere. Like physically, they're there, invested 500 minutes of the world's time with you. So you could literally be, you're taking up 500 minutes of the entire world's time. You bloody be useful in that capacity, you see. So that really left, I think, one of the deepest impressions in me, in that, job of a speaker is not just to fill up air.
Takeaways, you mean?
Yeah.
Making sure that there's at least one good takeaway.
Takeaway in a functional term, you just need to be useful in the time. And what useful is very subjective.
Yeah.
Right? You leave a mark is useful.
Okay.
You get them thinking is useful.
Okay.
You make them feel angry is useful.
Right.
You make them feel silly is useful. You make them feel hurt is useful. You make them feel more than how they came in is useful. So I think it's very dynamic, and it really depends who the audience are, who you are, what do you think is the bridge between you and your audience.
You said earlier that you conduct, of course, training for public speaking, right? Okay. I'm not going to ask you to give it the whole gamut of it. Of course not.
Yeah.
Yeah. But if I were to ask you, top of head, what are the more important tools or techniques that you've used to help executives develop a compelling presentation narrative? What do you do? How do you get someone going from someone who says, I want to be a better public speaker, or I've never spoken in public before because I have a phobia about it. Is there anything you think you have in your arsenal of techniques or tools that have brought people to another level?
Wow. Okay. So if I go to the tools and techniques again, definitely a lot of
just
things.
Pick one.
Just the biggest one.
Yeah.
Just happened yesterday. So I was coaching a MD of a global American MNC. So when you look at this chap, he's late 40s. He's like achieving. He's been promoted 7 times in the same bank continually, obviously, right? So and it's being headhunted to yet another global bank. So when the first thing I met him is like, are you sure you need like presentation communications coaching? And he said yes, vehemently. He said yes, and that's why he wanted to get started. And he was serving his gardening leave prior to joining another bank.
Okay.
So he wanted everything to be crash course. I said, bro, that's not how I roll. But since you want it so urgently, and I'm based in Singapore for this month, let's do. So when I worked with him, I realized that in spite of his achievements, he was like being a top salesperson. He was driven and moved to a role whereby he needed to be more visible. Instead of like a small team kind of like, hey, sharing of practice, results, blah, 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 is going to be more visible globally. So that was his premise for speaking. So I'm going to arrive at the tip here. So when I started work with him yesterday, I realized that, like sometimes we don't present or we don't speak up for how we are worth and what we are worth. And what I mean by that is, if you imagine his stature, he should be, wow, that kind of like energy, the kind of presence, yeah? And when he started to present, I felt he was so safe. He was like not making his voice heard. In all sense of it, he was not like, like when his department did this, he didn't have a sense of like ownership or pride. So these things give away in people when how they present. So the first reaction is like, Ben, I've been speaking like this all this while. Then I say, yup, I get that is your habitualization, your sort of your habit. But why are you playing it so safe?
Safe in terms of what? Content?
Safe in terms of content, safe in terms of delivery, safe in terms of the sort of like his stature, his presence.
Stature, presence, body language.
Yeah. So he's very clamped up.
Right.
And I basically had to mirror him. I video recorded and I said, like, how would you describe him? Yeah, like if I'm listening to him, I don't even feel that he is speaking like from MD. He's a managing director, right? It's more speaking like the stature of like maybe a junior to senior manager. Yeah. So what I did was that, I had to get him to be clear of the narratives and the voices. So I do this little exercise called like black dogs, white dogs, right? We have a dog at home in your place, right?
Yeah.
So black dogs are the voices that are disempowering. White dogs are the voices that are empowering. So I got him to be very clear what was his inner game, what's his inner narrative like, because up there, it's a really freaking noisy place.
Yeah.
Of all times, especially when going into nervous, high anxiety situations, speaking, for example. And then he lists down, okay, my white dogs are, I'm a subject matter expert, I led my team, I'm very proud. But more importantly, is black dog is that I'm not a good speaker. And then I say, hey, how does that come about? So that's where coaching for me is really getting to the story behind the story.
Right.
So what realized for him was that in his early 20s, when he graduated from his country in India, he was promoted to do some like speaking and like presenting. He didn't do well. It's a bit like your mentee, right? Like Ile, right? And he didn't have a good person like guiding him. So as a result of that, something that happened in the early 20s, he had the conclusion caught. I don't think I'm good at speaking. I don't think that when people are looking at me, I'm presenting a content, I can do well as that. So can you imagine, functionally as a salesperson, he grew up the ranks, 7 promotions, 1 bank, all the way. But that speaking thing, that story, he carried the baggage for 20 over years. So I just asked him in no uncertain terms, like, why are you allowing that baggage of 20 plus years still weighing you down all the way until today? Yeah. So that's, I believe speaking is always an inside out maneuver.
Yeah.
So there's obviously the tactical, the strategic parts, like for example, how to use your voice, your hands, your eye contact, there's even like the power pose theory.
Yep.
Yeah, where you do your power pose and then you feel like pumped up. But for me, I feel what's the narrative? So for me, the narrative they were speaking was the black dog, which is, I don't think I'm great at speaking. In fact, I think I'm terrible at speaking. So until I work on that level, no amount of strategies would sort of shift that identity. So for me, if you ask me what's about speaking, is really finding out who the hell do you think you are when you're speaking? It sounds very like...
No, I understand.
Yeah,
I know where you're coming for this.
Yeah.
But thanks for sharing that. Basically, what you're saying is that drop your baggage outside and then see a different perspective of yourself, right? And then also not to be afraid to deliver the things that you don't just play it safe. Right?
Yeah. The playing it safe is an outcome and impact of what's happening inside, right?
Yeah.
So I have a white dog. Like for example, there were times I have tons of imposter syndrome. Like bloody hell, I don't even have like a day of corporate working experience, but I have to speak to people who are from Harvard, like this Ivy League and that Ivy League
guys,
and all the C level. I would ask myself, like, who the hell am I, right? So I had to have a white dog, which is, I'm here to express, not to impress. Yeah. So when I have that as a white dog, I'm feeding that voice. I tell myself my job here is not to impress anyone. Even if I try, they wouldn't be. And even if I don't try, I can't control that. So instead of looking down the impression route, I'm here to express, to share my journey. And if it impacts you, and then also that story about being a person of impact, of usefulness, if you're taking up the world's time, those are the things I put in my head.
Right.
So when you put more good things in your head, then you remove the things for the baggage. You remove the baggage unconsciously, if I'm making sense.
You do. You make sense. I just hope that the people watching this can actually sit
follow,
back, rewind it and just listen to it again, okay? You also describe yourself as a professional millennial speaker. What's that?
That was actually a formal label. So just to give a bit of flavor,
context,
color,
Yeah.
I used to talk about like how organizations could attract the younger people But I think that gave way to, and that was a very comfortable narrative because I was engaged by a global insurance company for a millennials gig, and they say, hey, like what can you teach about millennials? Yeah, then I say, hey, millennials, what's hot? Social media, and then that really gave birth to my current birth of work. So that was an old bio. I take a responsibility for not updating it.
No, I'm sorry.
No. Yeah.
Maybe I should have asked the question, but anyway, I've asked it.
Yeah.
So now, what's happening with this now?
Yeah, it gave way. It sort of gave birth to what I do.
Yeah. What is?
Which is I train financial advisors on how to build their brands online, how to use the power of your narrative, your story. Yeah. So that's what I speak, teach, coach, and train.
Okay, then it's clearer to me.
Yeah.
We've been talking about your journey as a speaker and a coach. Now let's talk about you as an entrepreneur. So what challenges have you encountered?
I think my season right now is to put my ego at home and to know that as a boss, you're not supposed to be bossy. Although I'm not bossy, but as a boss, your job is really to be really useful and to serve people at where they are at the level where they need you to be at.
Okay. So other than that, commercially, man, when you started the business, what were the challenges you faced?
I started out as a one-man operator. We call this OMO, like a self-employed. It was okay. It was like finding the validation. So I think for me as a young guy, when I started to realize that, hey, I was making a multiple of what my folks in the banks, even the Big Four was earning, it was okay. I feel I'm somewhere. But in my my early 30s to my mid 30s, doing all of that, then I realized that if I continue running like that, I could actually still do what I was doing all the way until 50s and 60s. I think I could say I was one of the few people who's lucky enough to find a piece of work that I love and yet get paid by that. But then I ask myself, if I don't do anything else or more in different shape, size, or form, would I regret that? Yeah.
Let's talk about the tangible, shall we?
Yeah.
When we talk about on the entrepreneurial journey, you incorporated the business eventually.
Yeah.
Right? And then you were still a one-man operation. What is it like now?
So the first one-man operation, then I hired a support team. So I have 2 to 3 people supporting me. Then because now I train people in terms of social media and branding, I realized there was one big need, which is, I could work with a director in the insurance business. I could ask this bugger to do like a CapCut to edit on Canva. Can he learn it? Yes, he can learn, but it's every post, every caption, everything, it takes up way too much time. So I built a media production company out of the Philippines. Yeah, I have a 6 close to 7 person there.
Yeah.
A copywriter, video editor, social media manager, project manager that reps everything. So think of me like social media is an exhausting business, especially for entrepreneurs.
It is, yes.
Yeah. So I basically strip up everything that cannot be that can be stripped away, but retain what cannot be stripped, which is video. Because video is something, there's obviously now AI and video and stuff like that, but the video in the purest form is you being you, your unadulterated, your energy, right? And then with all this video, we send it to cloud, the technology, and then my team in the Philippines handle everything of that.
Right.
Yeah, it's my value add, you see. That's my next stage of beyond and above an OMO, a speaker and coach. How much more use? How can I be more useful to my clients? It's always, my narrative has always been guided by that. How can I deliver more impact? How can I be more useful?
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of not on the socials or the website, so maybe it's like a
no.
surprise.
I just wanted to understand.
Yeah.
I think people ought to know as well, because from doing what you're doing as a professional in this field, you built a business out of it.
Yeah.
Right, and then you added more value to that business. Okay, and I also wanted to just find out from you, what were the challenges you encountered as you went along in your entrepreneurial journey? Let's get down to the down and dirty to this business.
Happy to.
At the end of it all, right? Being an entrepreneur, you need to be able to get engagements. You need to be able to get jobs. So did you bounce into any blank walls? Let's say, for example, 2020, 2021, during COVID, were you impacted? And how did you also overcome challenges as you were growing that business as a young man? Right, you like you said, you spoke at an engagement before, and you had zero.
Yep.
Zero coming out from that. What do you do? How was it like? That the feeling that the pain that you had to go through, and what did you do to overcome that?
Like I
What advice would you give,
I
basically?
sometimes tell my wife that, with all this pain, it feels like I've died many times in one lifetime. Like a part of me just died, and then yet it gave birth and rebirth. But if you ask me, like, sorry, your guiding question was?
What were the challenges you went through? Yeah.
I think the challenges at all stages is really making sure that there was demand for you, right? Or you had to create a kind of demand.
Okay.
So whether you're a service-based or product-based entrepreneur, if you're not selling, you're not making money, then you got to close shop. So I always believe that, sometimes as entrepreneurs, if you're thinking like, oh, I shall be just building up my craft, I'm going to like do more creative work. I think it's important, but the moment where your business gets really business is when people start to pay. When there's money in the bank, cash in the bank, there's validation. So the biggest challenge for me at the earlier stages was making sure that people want to pay for me.
Right.
Then at the next stage is making sure that people want to pay for me continually. Then at this current season is continually and upsize, bigger ticket, bigger problems.
What advice would you give a young Ben? Right now, for example, you meet Ben, who's in the university, right? And on the assumption that Ben at that time has already decided, I am going to be a speaker and trainer and coach. What advice would you give Ben? That young person, 20 years old.
I think finally I'll give two advice. I mean, the first advice would be the functional, which is, just stick to one lane, because I felt that I was a typical millennial, itchy backside syndrome. I was like wanting to speak, then want to do the full day training, coaching, different niche. So pick one lane, do it freaking well, right? Like what you say, once you become good and then good to great, and that's where you have that commanding power, the decision-making power, that gravitas. But yet, like maybe in this season of my life, I went through a retreat, like a spiritual retreat, like last weekend. I would tell the young Ben is take time to breathe, right? Take time to pause and take time to separate yourself. Like, is this the dream that you want, or would there be something that's bigger, bolder?
Okay.
I know it sounds contradictory, like, it sets me different direction, but that's my current space right now.
Sure.
Yeah.
With respect to that.
Yeah.
But on the same Ben, 19, 20-year-old Ben, and Ben is thinking, I want to do this. Where do I go? How do I get this? Where can I learn? What do I need? What would you tell him?
I think the aspect I did what I could, right? Like, for example, I started to say, hey, back then I enrolled for the MC Academy.
No. What's available? Yeah, what's available at this time?
Yeah.
Right now it's today. You met Ben.
Yeah.
It's somehow or rather the parallel universes just, crossed over each other.
Yeah.
And you met yourself, the 19, 20-year-old you. But that guy, that Ben from the parallel universe has decided that I'm going to do this. What's available? What do I need to do? Where do I go?
Yeah. So if we're going down the route of like strategy, tactics.
Route, my friend, route is not route. I'm sorry, I'm being such a grammar Nazi. It's route, mate. Route.
Going down the route of like a strategy. I knew you would catch that.
I'm sorry, man.
Yeah.
Shit.
Route is the Singaporean thing, isn't it?
No, route is a... Okay, every fucking season I'm going to talk about this stupid word. ROUTE in America. They say it's Americanized.
Is it?
It's not Americanized because American English even says route. In recent times, for I don't know what fucking reason, the people on film in Hollywood, and then of course the whole damn country has started to pronounce it as route.
Yeah.
Well, we are supposed to be speaking the King's English, right? So it's route is never route. But the Americans were saying route for a long time. And then it became route. And then we watch it on TV. We watch it in the movies. We keep hearing that word as route. And it's not. And I don't know who came up with that shit. And everyone else of these guys in the US started calling it route.
Routing.
It's not right.
Router.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe.
So is it called a router or router?
You see, that thing is a digital thing. It is IT, right?
There's no connection whatsoever.
There's no connection whatsoever.
Yeah,
Whoever invented it, right, calls it a router, so be it. It's called a router. You are the origin of the word describing that gadget is router. But it doesn't mean that the word has been in existence for a long, long, long time.
Yeah.
Route becomes route. It's route. You know what I mean? Yeah. And you know why the Americans cannot call it router anyway? Because in American slang, router is something to do with plumbing. So they don't want to call it a
route. You can collapse
route.
it as well.
Yeah, correct. Right. So this is what I think, and it's what I believe is the case or the cause of this. But yeah. Oh gosh.
Going to the root of the.
I always bring up. It always happens every season.
I know it's your pet peeve.
It is my pet peeve because this is not the only word, man. I mean, if I really want to be a grammar Nazi, there's a lot of shit that I can't stand.
But that's a great thing, you see. Like, it shows that you're actively listening and you're very perceptive. You're sharp.
Right? But like you, man, I mean, I also teach the subject, you know, and
shows that you're a much better teacher than
no. That's not my point. That's not my point.
I get you.
What I'm saying is that I mean, two wrongs don't make a right.
We're trained to be sensitive, right? So when I was listening to another coach today on social media, and she was saying the word pronunciation is pronunciation. Right?
It's pronunciation.
Exactly. So these are the things that, because, you know, we've gone through this whole training, we've become very, or at least more sensitive.
Yeah, but you know something, man, the problem with Singaporeans per se, well, not just them, most Asians, is not really pronunciation. The problem is more enunciation.
It's a lesser evil.
Yeah, actually, it's not a lesser evil because, in my opinion, it is about how the melody of your word is supposed to be.
The stresses and the emphasis.
Yes, your inflections and where you sustain, where you shorten the syllable, and phonology. You know, so that is how I prefer to teach the subject. In terms of verbal, of course, you know, tonality is one. I get you into key and I get you the resonance that you need. Because we know that tonality is something that's very hard to teach. Content is content. Delivery of the content is something else, right? So that's more my thing.
I mean, if we had more time, I'll ask you, like, what's the function or what's the premise of great tonality? Is it a state? Is it a trained muscle?
Well, let's put it this way, it's frequency. Frequency, the power to convince people, taking just that as an example. It's not exclusive just to that. It is about frequency. Making someone happy. Happiness, joy is a higher frequency. Okay? Usually for things that's a little bit more, gives you a little bit more, an ominous feeling is a lower frequency. Right? And then there's also vibration.
I was about to go in there.
Which is resonance. And resonance in your tone. How does it happen? It comes from your chest cavity. How do you activate that? And I found a method, which I will not share on camera because people have to pay me money to teach them this.
Time to book Chris coaching.
to get you to a particular key. So content can be, content is content.
Content's everywhere.
But then again, delivering content by memorizing a script is an absolute cardinal sin where I'm concerned. There are other ways to do it more effectively, right? Without losing yourself. As what you said earlier, I found my voice. I lent on what I know as an introvert that are my strengths, and I used them. Along the same vein, it's about that, not losing who you are, and people still recognize that this is who this person is.
Correct.
Right? And because he's delivering it the way he ought to be delivering it. And it's not about memorizing, because the moment you memorize, your elocution is contrived. So that's what my belief is. Like, I'm not going to shove it down everybody's throats. But I do with my students, though.
Correct.
Yeah,
I mean,
people
I could see
I teach.
different schools of thoughts, different ways, and even down to the different students. What do they need at different points in time? But you're saying going down that route of the strategy to tell the younger Ben. So if the younger Ben brings it to now, this era, I feel 2-3 things that will also be relevant to people who wants to build a speaking practice.
Right.
Which is, one, you need to learn how to garner attention. Right? Creating a podcast is an art of garnering attention. Hopefully bring right people, curating right conversations. But more so, if you are going to be a speaker, you need to, again, be someone who delivers great value on a commercial basis. So how do you create an attention around you being useful? You can say all these things, you can teach all these things, you know the problems of your segment market, and what's your take to that, right? So that's one, creating and garnering attention. I think the second thing that you need to do is converting the attention. So conversion means, at least in my world, is making this knowledge useful and desirable that people want to pay for it.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think a lot of speakers, I think in Singapore, our system trains us to just take papers, right? Exams, all the actor. Again, with due respect to the trainers in Singapore, I feel we are so enamored over like papers and certifications. We don't even know like what, like for example, if you teach communications, how do you sell this idea for the need of great communications to maybe a tech client? Right? You need to step out of your world into their world. So I think conversion happens when you can speak in the language that they are speaking, to teach and say, hey, whatever you're training is desirable for them and is a need for them, such that if they don't book you, if they don't get you, the people stand to suffer. So first getting the attention and then converting it such that, there'll be real dollars coming in into your bank account. I feel that, the speakers of today, if they are great at doing these two things, they are almost on track to a very flourishing practice.
Okay. So basically, your advice to the younger Ben is also the same advice you would have given for any young person out there who's thinking about going into the speaking practice.
Correct. So should be one and the same.
Interesting what you said, because that bit about what happens if you're speaking to your demographics that might not be relevant to your whatever content you prepared. So you've got to adjust your content to make sure it's attractive to that particular segment of the marketplace that you're presenting to.
I think you brought up the word which is relevance, and the relevance is a tie into the goal of that, right? So if you're just speaking for recreational, so again, the word going to premise, like being a professional speaker means you're speaking to get paid. You're not a hobbyist speaker. So if you want to be a speaker, you could go to Hong Lim Park and you have like 20, 30, 50 people. You can speak to entertain. But I think for me, given the path that I want to go, I don't want to offend people, but if you want to speak and you get mullahs in the bank, then I hate to say this, we are in a commercial world, right? So we need to know the language of commerce, which is really, you cannot just any old how speak. You need to be focused. You need to be leading and forwarding in a way such that, the clients will say, yeah, I think this guy knows us. Like we can get a bit of him, get a piece of him or her. That's what I'm thinking.
So it's not just about your craft. It's what we've always preached before, FD and me. It's not just about your craft, but you got to take care of business. You got to know business.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's very hard to teach as well. Granted, again, the whole Singaporean education system is more and more certs, more courses. I think some courses are great, right? But, not all the trainers are like you and FD, you know business on some good level. So sometimes we just want to take like curriculum design, how to speak, how to do stand-up training is great. And you have the subject matter is great. But, at the end of the day, who are you trying to appeal to? What are their problems? How does your knowledge becomes a solution? If you clear all the dynamics, then you have a speaking practice, a professional speaking practice.
So it seems to me, my opinion is, Ben, sometimes it's a great idea for people to just stray away a little bit from the usual courses that they take, right, for their degrees or diploma programs. And maybe business, going to business, studying business, it ought to be something that everyone should do.
I like to think so.
Really?
Yeah. So for example, I think the way I would look at, even like as I grow, nurture my young kid right now, right? Like now he's like into art, right? Then I would say, hey, like it's great to be in the passion and the craft of art, but maybe let's open up his mind to say, why don't you try to monetize that? Because I think monetization or creating the commercialness or commercialization of that brings off another whole paradigm and dimension. For example, you start to realize, maybe you think your art is nice, but people think it sucks. That's good feedback, right? Then you have that internal dialogue to say, I don't think it sucks, but why does he think it sucks? Then there's a bit of maneuverability. Then there's also another part about, how much, people say, is it $10? I thought I want to like maybe charge $50, right? Then there's another conversation. So I feel a lot of us are very book smart, but the book smartness to the street smartness is where you need to really put yourself out there. And when money and dollars and decisions are put on the table, it forces a next level of growth to us, right? So how can sports be commercialized? Again, I think commercialization sometimes gets a very evil and bad rap, right? I met a fair share of creators say, Ben, you don't know us, right? Like creators are creators, money is evil. But I feel money is also a mark, is a validation that people are willing to put aside resources from their end to buy into your work, right? So if we look at it from an exchange point of view, necessarily is the economics of it then govern that, you have a bit of weight, not just in your internal creative role, but on the external dimension, if I'm making sense.
Wow. You're deep, man.
Yeah, I think
you're speaking to a guy with a diploma in BTC.
BTC is what?
Botatse.
Botatse. Tok PCM Bak Chor Mee.
Good grief, this guy has just dug a
BTC.
Pacific Ocean, something so deep like a Pacific Ocean, man. It's so fucking deep.
I think speak to Chim, but if to really like to distill it is like, no, don't just be in your world, right? But when you start to go out there, then you start to experience different interpretations of that. You start to take your art and then you'll be excited. I think in all sense of it, I'm very for business, maybe more capitalistic, that when you put yourself out there, right, you will grow. It's painful. Like for all the times I got rejected, clients say, hey, you're not worth this $.
You suffer for your passion.
Yeah. You suffer for your passion, but you also suffer in that linearity that takes you in. I feel like in Singapore, it's not a cheap place to live in. So you could really be, like indulgent in your art. But you got to ask yourself sustainability as well. Yeah. And if the bills are not being paid, if my son doesn't have money to pay the diapers and milk powder, how long can I do this?
You see, that's the trouble, isn't it? I mean, it's to pursue something you love so much. Then again, you got to think about whether or not it puts food on the table and a roof over your head. I know. I sound like bohemian, or I sound like a freaking hippie when I say this, but that's really sad, especially when you know that something you love and you're so good at, but it's just not going to be able to help you survive in a country that's expensive to live in.
I think my counter thought too is it doesn't have to be sad though. Like it's just how you want to play your game. Because again, I mean, technically, some people will find that if you're doing a 9 to 5 and you're not happy with it, then if it pays the bills and you can do something happy on the side,
okay, that's
how happy.
I'm sorry, my friend, but just because you're speaking in the context of the people that you've been surrounded with, in your environment, in your profession, I may be quite presumptuous by saying what I just did, but I think so. Because why? In my environment, there are people out there who's great at art. Yeah. Since you use art as a subject, really great. We're talking about realism art. Yeah. Handmade, hand drawn. And then try and sell it. No one buys. And then you have people who get hired to do artwork on the sides of buildings. And they're beautiful stuff. And they get paid fucking peanuts. Because people out there go, well, I just don't, you're just an artist. I mean, thanks for this great work. I love it. This is how much we'll pay you. And they pay you cheap. It's a perception of stereotypes as well that come into play. So it is sad. That's why I say sad, because there are people, I have friends I know whose kids are great at art and they love it. Yeah. But they know they can't survive here. What do? They fly them somewhere else. Correct. To have,
But to have the choice and option is also a privilege in itself. Not everyone has that option.
Precisely.
So it makes it even more sad.
Yeah, which makes it even sadder. So, I just think that, maybe my exposure to that environment
again,
is
where
more...
else, I always wonder, where else in the world would there be a place where, you still can be happy and still make something that's sustainable, doing what you love for the rest of your life? Yeah. I mean, for all the cities that I've spoken in, I still see that sense of imperfection, that realism coming in.
No, of course.
I don't know.
Of course. I mean, the grass always seem greener elsewhere. Of course, there will always be it. There's no utopia here. Yeah. But sadly, I mean, there's got to be a way to strive towards it
that doesn't lose our soul.
Exactly. And we should never lose our souls.
We shouldn't.
Yeah.
It's our soul of life force, right? And if we lose that, then what's the point?
Yeah, and then people get stereotyped into things. Like for example, if you go to Australia, New Zealand, UK, even the US, if you're in a trade, you're a tradie. Whether you're a plumber, whether you're an electrician, right? You're not looked down upon. You're not. No, people don't make funny remarks to you or bargain your price down or say that it was a simple job, and you're charging me so much, why do I have to pay you transportation, blah, 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 which this is me saying this, you can recognize all that, don't you? Right? Most people, it's very real, but this doesn't happen elsewhere. Tradies are respected because they can do the kind of stuff that you can't do. This is where we have yet to learn something.
Singapore is a hard place without heart. Yeah. That's how I like to see it. It's a hard place to live, and we could do with a lot more heart.
Yeah, which I think is sorely lacking at this time. I love my country, don't get me wrong.
I love it too.
Because I love my country, that's why I say these.
I always believe that, when people stop complaining
Yeah.
It's a bad sign. The fact that people are complaining shows that, we still love this place enough to want
To
to
say something. Yeah. Rather than just, be sheep.
Yep. I can see where that was coming from.
That's something I never liked, actually, to be honest. Yeah. So anyway, Ben, thanks so very much for your insights, man. Thanks for being on the show.
No problem.
I hope you had fun. I hope you enjoyed yourself.
I sure did.
My goodness, this guy's so cheap,
Yeah. Maybe too convoluted sometimes.
No.
Too much dialogue in the head.
I wouldn't say that.
Yeah.
No, I wouldn't say that. It's just that you are a very intelligent guy, and this is how you express yourself, and I respect that. There's nothing wrong with the way you express yourself. It's just that I was hoping to have a real simplified conversation. But anyway, it's good. I welcome this. I welcome it. It doesn't matter to me because I get what you mean, and I thank you for really sharing your thoughts and your journey and what you've been through. And I think the great takeaway for me is that, listen, man, you can be an introvert. You still turn out great. Just don't be a fool, and that when you found a talent and you don't work hard at it. Yeah, and that's my takeaway, man. I mean, you worked hard at it. You sat down, you reflect. Reflecting is hard work. It drives you up the freaking wall, doesn't it?
All the time. I mean, my takeaway from just watching you run your thing, it's like there's always a season for you to celebrate yourself being alive, right? Like I see you running this setup. It takes time, energy, resources, and even that clarity and purity of intention, to put it very simply. Like, you need to know what you freaking want and to stick by it and to hold your guns, and you did, right? And I think that's something to be celebrated as well.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Thank you so much. I mean, I thank God every day that, when I see the studio and I come in and say, oh my goodness, dream come true. And really, I invite only special people to come in here, man.
Thank you.
And really, I'm proud of what you've done. I'm proud of what you've become. I'm proud of what you've made yourself. And I've been following, that I haven't.
Yeah.
I know what you've been up to.
Still a work in progress,
of course. So so to end the show, can you just tell me and tell everyone?
Yeah.
What's your plans for the future?
My plans
in the near future.
I think nothing about. I mean, again, I think I come to a stage whereby I think business is definitely important, but I think what's important is more the roles that I play. I want to be a present as well as a dad who's like energetic, dynamic, and someone who lives a larger than life kind of person. So that, when my younger boy looks up to me, say, hey, I could turn to you whenever I have issues or challenges or fears or concerns whatsoever. And now obviously to my wife is to also be that stronghold for her, as she has been for me for the past 5, 7, close to 10 years for business.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's my season right now. This is my calling.
Great. Yeah. Good to hear that. Good to know that, man. And I wish you all the best for that.
Thank you.
Be a great dad.
Yeah.
And be a good husband. Thank you so much, Ben, for being on the show. Thank you, everyone. This is season 4. And this is the first shoot for season 4. It may not be the first episode you've seen so far, but it is my first shoot, and I'm glad to be back in a hot seat in front of the cameras and in front of the microphone.
Really hot right now.
Yeah, it is. And I've had Benjamin Loh with me, and do catch this guy, man. Sometimes you can go to LinkedIn, and you can also go to YouTube. You find him there and listen to the stuff that he does, and how he gets you going on stage as a public speaker. This has been the Chris Hansen Conversation. This is Chris Hansen. I'll see you guys again real soon. Bye-bye.